Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Noble Podcast. This is Michael Chakrian, the host. I'm here today with a special guest. I'd like to introduce you to Ashod Mooradian. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, no, sure. Hi, Michael. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
I'm a California attorney that specializes in legal ethics and state bar defense and license compliance. I used to be a prosecutor, a senior prosecutor at the state bar for almost 10 years. And then about 8 years ago, I opened up my own office to focus on the defense side of the equation.
Okay. First thing that comes to mind is why did you make that switch?
Yeah, no, it's a great question because, the interesting thing was before I went to the state bar and took that job, I was a family law attorney.
Okay.
And uh, but when I got to the state bar and I'd made that switch from being a solo to going and working for the government, they recruited me. I went to go work for them, but it was pretty early on, like maybe 2 months in, when I realized, oh, wait a minute, I really like this area of law. Not only that, it fits my personality. It fits the kinds of things I care about.
Sure.
There's many, many practice areas that you can go into as an attorney, and I felt very fortunate to find one that was just made for me. Like I was born to do this kind of work, and a lot of my personality and characteristics just made me really effective at doing it,
Got it.
which is why I got promoted up through the ranks. But the thing about working for government, that unless you do it, you don't understand, is that politics is really a heavy influence on your office.
Sure.
And you think, okay, we're getting assigned cases and we're investigating and we're trying to figure out what the truth is. But above us in Sacramento and other places that oversee the state bar, there's decisions being made about how to prosecute or what our priorities should be. Just one day they'll tell us, oh, by the way, all that stuff you're doing, we're stopping. We're going to do something completely different now. So there's a lot of
Got it.
upheaval and I mean literal 180s. We went from a system where, for example, that they call it horizontal prosecution, where someone else will do, let's say, the notice, but then I might take it to trial,
Okay.
to a vertical model where the same lawyer did the whole thing. So there's a lot of change there.
Just so we're clear, I mean, just someone that's watching might not know. Maybe you want to explain what the state bar is and
Oh,
what a
sure.
prosecutor does.
Right. Yeah, so the State Bar of California is actually in the Constitution of California. It created as a public corporation to oversee and the regulation of the any attorney that's licensed to practice law. All of us attorneys here in California receive our license from the Supreme Court. You look at your certificate, it says Supreme Court of California. It doesn't say, for example, Los Angeles County Superior Court or even Court of Appeal. So all of our licenses are bound to the discretion, really, and the admission from the Supreme Court. And so the state bar, in effect, is the agency that has been delegated to take care of a lot of the license functions, everything from admissions to discipline, which is where I worked. The disciplinary office is in charge of receiving complaints from usually clients, but it could also be from other attorneys, sometimes judges. Sometimes the state bar starts its own investigation, but essentially there'll be an investigation based on a complaint or some kind of public awareness of misconduct, and then an investigator and an attorney team up to basically vet that out by sending a letter to the attorney that's been identified as the person that allegedly made the violation, and then determining whether or not the case should be closed after that investigation or proceed further and for public discipline in by filing what's called a notice of disciplinary charges in state bar court. California is unique in that it has an actual professional court with real judges that only deals with state bar charges against attorneys to discipline their license. They can't issue money damages or anything like that. All they can do is agree or not agree that an attorney's license should be disciplined. And there are various forms of appeal from there, all the way up to the Supreme Court. But the Supreme Court, really does not get involved. They more or less go with whatever the state bar court's doing. So the state bar court kind of is your final destination.
Okay.
So that's what I was involved in, doing those investigations and just making sure that these complaints were properly tend to, because after all, the point of the state bar is to protect the public
Yeah,
from lawyers who've lost their way, no longer understand their duties, or just don't care.
for
People,
sure.
and so that's what you do at the state bar.
Yeah. So as you're saying that, I'm already thinking uh instances where, you're talking about going after prosecuting people who may not be deserving of a license based on some of their conduct. And I'm thinking, there's times in my practice that I've been approached and been asked all types of crazy questions, like of things that I want to get involved in. And my answer to all of that has always been, I would never risk my license for just this short, small type of gain. It's not worth it for me.
Right.
And a lot of attorneys that I know that I network with, they're all the same. It's like, why would I risk my license to do something like that? Where it's like the short term gain is so small, but if something happens to my license, like that, there goes my whole career. It's not worth it. It'll
Right.
never. It's very unlikely that something will add up where it's like it's worth that type of risk.
Right.
So as someone who is a prosecutor and you're basically going after people for their license or to get them some sort of reprimand, do you feel like that's made a lot of enemies, because you're coming after something that they hold dear?
Yeah. I mean, I personally was fortunate enough never to have that happen, but it
Mhm.
is a reality of working at the state bar.
Yeah.
I mean, the state bar going back about, I don't know, maybe 25 years ago, the whole office was firebombed
Yeah.
by an attorney that was being investigated.
Really?
Yeah, the whole office got burned down. I mean, it was years before I started there. Other times there have been people that have been attacked. But it's very far and few between. But it does happen, and there are a number of security precautions that we're trained to undertake as prosecutors to make sure that we don't just make ourselves a victim too easily.
Yeah. Uh,
Um,
how about this? How about after you switched, is there someone that you've prosecuted that will later come to you and you've hired as like an ethics attorney?
yeah, I mean, there's a rule actually. Well, there's two different levels of this. The first thing was when I left the office, I couldn't get involved in a state bar case for 6 months. So I kind of had to find something else to do
Okay.
during those 6 months when I left. If someone comes back on a case that I literally prosecuted, the same case, then I would be conflicted out. I
Of
wouldn't
course.
engage on that. Just really, even if there wasn't a rule, I wouldn't do it. But if the same respondent, which is what the attorney that's sort of under investigation is called a respondent in the state bar discipline system, came back to me on a new matter,
Yeah.
I would be free to take that. Whether I would or not, it would probably lean on the side of not really for their benefit, because I think what it would do is it would introduce a new sort of issue into the case that maybe the prosecution can somehow use to say, oh, Ashod was the guy that prosecuted him, and look, now he's defending him, and and try to make hay of that in some way. So I feel like those kinds of things really don't help the client. They just make the same job a little more difficult.
Yeah.
It
Muddy.
doesn't.
It's like muddier, huh?
Right, and so why introduce that to him? There are other people that do what I do, not as well, but they do it.
Mm,
And of course, I have colleagues that I respect, and so there's more than enough business to go around. So I would avoid that as well.
got it. Um, but obviously your experience helps you with doing your practice now,
Yeah.
right?
No, no. I mean, the
You
thing
know
about
how it
working
works.
at the state bar
Yeah.
is it's very dense experience too. In those almost 10 years, I saw thousands of cases. I
Hmm.
mean, for a defense attorney to have the amount of experience that I have, they would have had to practice for 40 years.
Hmm.
So you're right. I've seen it all. Being at the state bar, I've seen the real underbelly of our profession. And to actually, I wanted to address something you were saying earlier about, you would never do things to jeopardize your license. Most of the people wouldn't also. And the statistics bear that out.
Yeah.
We have a very, very small percentage, less than 1%, that actually end up in trouble with the state bar. A few more percent get complaints, but the problem is California has 275,000 lawyers
Yeah.
or more. I mean, I know quite a few of those are inactive, but still, I was recently in Arizona for a conference. They have 8,000 attorneys. We probably have 8,000 attorneys within 5 miles of where we're sitting right now. So it's a completely different game when it comes to California and attorney regulation. We
Yeah.
just are are not only bigger, we're probably bigger than almost all the other states combined.
And it's arguably the most competitive market.
Right, right. That's what comes with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know.
Um, you said you do speaking engagements. What type of speaking engagements are you doing usually?
Yeah, always about legal ethics topics or state bar topics. I mean, really, it started with me when I was at the state bar.
Yeah.
They needed people to do outreach, and I was eager for that, so I got trained to do that. And so when I left, I just continued it. So really, I go to many bar associations. I do speak at least probably 20 to 25 times a year. I mean, I think I've already had 3 engagements this year so
Oh,
far, and I have another 3,
that's a lot.
4, planned. Yeah, but I like doing it. I feel like it's, in a way, giving back, but also remember, my clients are other attorneys.
Yeah.
I can't just go reach the average citizen. They don't have a license, they don't have a need for what I do, because all I do is legal ethics and state bar defense and license compliance. So when I go to bar associations, I'm also aware that these are potentially my clients, or more
Yeah.
properly, I would like to say, you may not never get in trouble, but you'll probably know someone that does.
Yeah. Does your family ever give you a hard time and say, "Oh, look, an ethical attorney? What was this? Like, what is
Yeah,
the
you mean
chances?"
they kid me or stuff?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Oh no, my family's pretty proud of me. I'm, in my family, my dad and mom were immigrants, like many Armenians, and so I was born here and educated here. The first one in my family to go to college, so much as law school. So yeah, they were actually supportive and proud of the fact that I was able to achieve becoming a lawyer. I mean, my dad was a trash hauler. I
Yeah.
used to drive a trash truck along with him, but
Nice.
I wanted something different for myself.
Yeah, that's awesome. Switching gears a little bit, maybe we can talk about how we met because I mean it's connected to some stuff that are going on now.
Yeah.
Um, so
Right.
I didn't know you before you had sent me a mailer,
Mhm.
and the mailer was in response to wildfire attorney advertisement and
Right.
whatnot.
Yeah.
Instantly, I was like, "Oh, what did I do?" It says like former state bar or whatever. I was like, oh, and then I saw that you're actually on the other side and you're
Right.
trying to give some advice maybe to attorneys who are advertising.
Yeah.
Um, what is happening right now in the advertising arena
Yeah.
that gives rise to potential problems ethically?
Right. I mean, my intention, what you're talking about, is what I called my dear colleague email. It was really just a message from me to the profession,
Yeah,
really about we're going into a period of time where we have many, I don't know, what is it, 100,000 people that have been affected by these
yeah,
fires. Some have lost everything, some have lost, enough, I guess you could say, and some were just maybe injured in the rough and tumble of it. And because legal advertising is not, we're not free to do things in legal advertising that, maybe someone that's selling, mufflers or whatever can do. So we're limited in how we can approach, our profession and letting people know about what we do. So I thought it was, based on also past experience, I thought it was a good time to send out the message to just remind everyone. I know all of us want to be as ethical as we can, but we should be careful because we're dealing with vulnerable people who really need help and may not be really understanding what's going on because of the
yeah.
trauma they've been through. So we really need to lean back on our ethics and make sure that whatever we do is truthful, non deceptive, and always in the best interests of clients.
Got it. Um, so what would be a specific example right now of an attorney doing something that's not in the best interest of their client to someone who just went through, let's say, a total loss?
Yeah, I mean, things like guaranteeing results.
Okay.
That's a big red flag, to say, sign up with me and you're going to get everything back that you lost, let's say,
Okay.
for example. Another one would be to use testimonials uh, to make the impression that, yes, I hired, John Smith and I had a great result. You should do so. Also, we got to be careful how you use testimonials.
Yeah.
As long as they're okay for you to say that I had a satisfied client, but they shouldn't be used to say directly or indirectly that you will have a similar result
Okay.
if you do this. And then probably the final example would be just to make sure that, this is maybe more from a philosophical viewpoint of mine, but I still think it's an ethical way to proceed, is to always remember that people need to be sort of handled carefully. Again, they're traumatized. They may not be making the best decisions. They're probably hearing from a lot of people, and to just be sort of loud and pick me kind of in those
Yeah.
contexts, I think can only lead to bad places ethically.
You said something about testimonials. I mean, if a client leaves a review and they say hire this person, I recommend him. He'll get you the max compensation or whatever. You're
Right.
saying that that's a problem. They leave a
No, I'm
review.
saying it's a problem if they go on after saying that to say, and the same will happen for you.
Okay.
It's okay to say, I, Tom, Campbell, hired Michael, and he got me a six-figure settlement. He was really great. He was very diligent, and he did his job well. No problem.
Okay.
But then if you say, and everyone that hires him will have the same result, I mean, it's almost ridiculous to say it. I
But
don't think people would say it, but that's what I'm kind of getting
but
at.
what happens if they say that? I mean,
Well, no, that's a good question. So there's a number of things that can happen. First of all, there's professional discipline. You could be reported. Most of the advertising complaints actually are a little bit different than regular client complaints, because what's happening is someone has received a letter, because some lawyers send out, let's say, 80,000 postcards.
yeah,
You know,
I live in Pasadena, so if you go to my house right now, every day there's a new letter.
right,
Yeah.
right. And and then some people will receive that. Let's say their house didn't even burn down, but the guy just did a widespread on his mail out job, where he was mailing to.
That's me.
Uh, then those people are the ones that send the mailers saying,
Yeah.
"I got this unsolicited advertisement. It's making all these promises. It doesn't say attorney advertisement. It doesn't say who's the responsible attorney or what have you."
But if it lists this is an attorney ad and it has a responsible attorney, then shouldn't that be okay?
Yeah, it is. I mean, because if you really want to get into it, essentially, it's a constitutional issue.
Yeah.
Part of the Freedom of Speech Amendment, the First Amendment on the U.S. and Article One, Section Two A of our California Constitution is the freedom of speech, which is actually broader than the federal one. But essentially, in that right of freedom of speech is a concept called commercial speech. So that's the right to sort of give out information about your business, and it should be protected because it helps consumers figure out how to make a decision based on the actual features of the product or the service. And so there's a strong value there. But the pushback came when they said it has to be truthful. In other words, it has to be borne out because a lot of advertisements, let's face it, this is the best hamburger you're ever going to eat.
Yeah, it's
That's not probably truthfully verifiable, but can a restaurant do that? Of course they can,
sure.
but a lawyer can't.
Sure.
So there are going to be now these pushbacks, these sort of limitations on a lawyer. Uh, and as long as, again, you're telling something that's truthful, and it's just an ad and it has all the various, like you said, if it checks all the boxes in terms of what it's supposed to have,
Yeah.
you're right. There's nothing wrong with it,
Yeah. And I'm not saying that they should do it because they definitely
Right,
shouldn't. I mean, I don't need all of those
right,
advertisements every day from different firms, but like technically they could,
right.
right? And I can't say I can't report them for sending something like that.
No, 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 not if they comply with everything.
Yeah. Um, have the fires affected you at all? I don't.
No, no. Where I live, the fires didn't reach. I mean, we had some winds and blackouts and things like that because it was wind that was, I think,
Yeah.
driving some of the fire. But no, we were fortunate that it didn't get anywhere near us.
Nice. Um, I was I was also curious to know if there's stuff maybe that you might want to ask attorneys.
Yeah, I mean, I like to get to the root of things. I'm
Yeah.
sort of, someone that thinks really deep into a topic. So I've thought a lot about, the rules, what roles they play, how effective are they? Why do some people seem to have no trouble following them, whereas others don't? They're always looking for, sort of the gray areas, if you will. Because, part of the attitude, part of the, I guess, the personality, I should say, not attitude, of a lawyer is someone that's always sort of pushing that boundary, right, on
Sure.
behalf of a cause or a client.
Yeah.
So maybe we should expect to see people that like to see how close they to the edge of a line they can get when it comes to a rule. But you know what? It's interesting to me to talk to lawyers about it because I find for the most part, it's not like they thought about it and they decided that they could do this and it would be fine. They don't think about it.
Yeah, I might not know certain
Yeah,
things, or like I might have overlooked or not interpreted some stuff the right way. I'm
right.
sure it's a problem that's across the board, like people have.
Right, because I think like you do workers' comp. I'm sure when you're getting a case, a bunch of stuff is going off in your mind.
Of course.
Looking at the case, you're deciding what kind of case it is. If you're doing applicant work or you're doing defense work, I'm sure there's all these different angles to it. What I try to do with my law office is to say, let's work into that practice area specific checklist in your mind.
Hmm.
Let's work in some items about ethics.
Okay.
So if you're talking to a client for the first time, okay, it's a prospective client. Understand that unless you make certain disclaimers and disclosures and handle that initial interview in a certain way, you may be conflicted out now
Yeah.
because they provided you, let's say, confidential information.
Yeah.
Okay, then you hired them. Then you want to think about, okay, is my retainer up to date? Is it contain the terms that I need it to contain?
Sure.
Because any attorney that's going to provide services that could exceed $1,000 needs to have a written retainer. Otherwise, you're stuck with really proving it all up, which is not going to be any fun.
I know recently the state bar has also made a big overhaul, right? Since the Girardi stuff had happened a few years ago.
Right.
Um, like, can you tell me your involvement with the changes around that time? Like, any new things
Yeah.
that
Well, I mean,
have been
I
implemented?
wasn't. Yeah, I was already out of the state bar when the Girardi
Right.
controversy happened. Although the Girardi controversy actually goes back in time, because the real controversy was that this gentleman had over 200 complaints, and many of them about settlement, the handling of settlement funds, and the state bar essentially did nothing on any of them.
Yeah.
And then it comes out that he's stolen upwards of 7 or 9 million. I don't know, forgot what the number was. And so State Bar was thoroughly, embarrassed by this and discredited, and they had to make a change. And the changes that they made now is that they got very strict on all our client trust accounting. Before, they would only inquire if there was a complaint. If someone said, "Hey, Mister, Miss Smith, paid me 38,000 on a settlement when it should have been 45,000 or 60,000 or something like that," and I think that they didn't handle the funds properly because when I asked them, they said there's no more money left, and there
Okay.
should have been. So then the state bar would go in and say, "Okay, show us your records, show us your accounting, your journal, your ledgers." But now they're moving to a system where that's going to actually be done continually. They already passed a new law where the banks are going to report now our balances.
Okay.
So now when you report in your client trust accounting protection program annually, the CTAP, you're going to give a number for your ending balance. Now they'll have something to check that against.
Got it.
And I think it's only going to expand. They're going to probably eventually create sort of a computer system where through something, I think they call it ESI, electronic information exchange kind of system, they'll be getting, it'll be anonymous data, but they'll be getting data continually on our balances.
Why did they wait until it gets bad and there's like huge errors and
Yeah.
mistakes to fix things? Like, why do you think that that's such a big role? Like, even in work comp, like it wasn't until like I think it was like 6 years ago, where they busted a bunch of attorneys for fraud, and then they changed all the rules. It's like,
Yeah.
but the problems were already existent for a long time, and they're just doing nothing about it.
Yeah, I mean, I would be speculating as to actually why they did it, but if you're asking my opinion, essentially, I think it goes back to one, we have a massive bar,
Hmm.
so it's difficult for it to react and keep up with changes, and sometimes two, because of the political nature of attorneys in California, sometimes there's no sort of political will up in Sacramento to divert funds or to put aside funds rather for these kinds of efforts. until something really, really bad happens there's public outcry, and now they have to do something. So you're
Right.
right. There is sort of this lag of regulation always behind the events. But that's true of many professions, not just the law.
That's true.
Yeah.
Do you think that knowledge about like how to run your firm the right way, is that something that people come to you for, like consultations?
Yes. No, no. A lot because I've seen so much, in terms of cases and working the cases, different fact patterns. I've developed a good sort of sense of what works and what doesn't, as well as just good judgment, frankly,
Yeah.
about what is the best way to approach a problem. And I always do that. That's my orientation anyhow, is to say, okay, you're calling me because you're not sure whether or not you could be retained by the sister of the guy you sued last year. So we're going to talk about whether that's a conflict. We're going to talk about the pros and cons of doing it, even if it's not a conflict. But I want to also in that conversation suggest that what's your conflict check system look like? Do you
Mhm.
actually have one? Or is it just sort of, well, I know all my clients in my memory, or I have an Excel spreadsheet laid out. There are products, there are computer products nowadays that can formalize these conflict checks. And for anyone that's doing more than, two, 300 clients a year, they absolutely should get one.
Got it. I mean, if I've never had a real issue with conflicts check because I'm usually doing plaintiff or applicant work. So it's like I'm
Right.
going after the insurance. Like
Right.
it's not like I have to screen the client against
Yeah.
himself, it
I
doesn't,
mean, unless the adjuster himself got injured and then came to you,
something like that. Yeah.
that would have to be it.
Never happened though.
Right.
I've
No, no,
had
that's a good point.
I've had an insurance adjuster refer like give my name out because I did such a good job on our case once.
Oh,
Or defense like just down the road.
yeah. Yeah, no, 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 that's quite a compliment.
Yeah.
But if I may, Michael, I wanted to kind of bring up something. I think it's a good time to bring it up. I mean,
Sure.
I have a service called Revere,
Okay.
which essentially takes all the difficulty out of trying to do what I suggested earlier, which was to incorporate ethics into your day-to-day practice.
Ashot, sorry to cut you off. What is Revere? Can you explain again?
Yeah, so Revere is a program where lawyers are able to receive legal ethics consultations and all the things they need to take care of their license and their law practice at a fixed monthly cost. They get to have interactions with me personally. It's me that's answering all the calls. It's me the one that's taking all the consultations, and you have the benefit of my 25 plus years of experience on handling a host of problems, so that you can just get back to doing your family law or your workers' comp or your PI, and I will make sure that you'll stay compliant on all the other aspects of being a lawyer. And there are many compliance issues for lawyers.
And do my guests get special promotion?
Yeah, all your viewers out there that are lawyers or California lawyers specifically, I'd love to offer them a free look at the program. If you go to revere.com, which is spelled REVEYR.com, you'll see that there are three programs to pick from: the Core Plus, and the Premier. If you want to try it out and you want to start at the core level, I'd be able to give that for 1 month free,
Awesome.
which is, otherwise would be $395 for the month. So there's a value there in place.
Of course.
So with that core program, you also get a retainer review and update, because the rules change for retainers. And I'm surprised constantly when I see attorneys retainers, how far behind they are. They're even using the old rule numbers. We've had the new rules since 2018. That
Mm.
isn't like yesterday or last month. That's what is that? 7 years ago. Um, so and then it also includes your MCLEs. So that's sort of your core plan. And I give it to attorneys all for $395 a month. And it's
Mhm.
month to month. It's an engagement. We sign a retainer agreement. So it's a regular attorney relationship, which I limit in number because there's only so many of these I can do. If someone's concerned about their state bar risk, that's why I created Core Plus. Core Plus adds to it what I call state bar triage. So you get up to 12 hours on top of all the other benefits to look over any state bar letter, any state bar contact. If you have an issue or a question about your CTAP reporting, all these state bar issues are added in. I also have other unique and I think innovative features, like helping you create an emergency absence plan
Okay.
with that. So, like, let's say, God forbid, you're injured or incapacitated, but you have 3 hearings on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. Well, who's taking care of that? Some people have a firm, they take care of it. But I'm mostly dealing with solos who, at best, have an assistant or a paralegal. Those people can't show up in court and say, Your Honor, we need a continuance,
Yeah.
or try to contact the clerk beforehand if it's possible. If we can set up a plan, I'm willing to fulfill that role for that subscriber.
That's a good concept.
And then finally I have the premium plan or the premier plan, I'm sorry, that just really takes care of we've kind of taken care of the ethics part, we can't take care of the state bar part. I go one step higher with the state bar. I double the hours. So really you'd never pay for state bar again. 24 hours a year in state bar is more than any average attorney will ever need. If you're getting more than one or two complaints a year, you're doing something very, very wrong.
I mean, is that common for someone to get one or two a year?
For the people that get in trouble, no. I mean, even the people that get in trouble, I see one,
Yeah.
a year or something like that, and then they learn.
Yeah.
But I've had clients that have had 10 complaints in 6 months.
Really?
So,
Yeah.
and then I add to that another thing which I think is really innovative that comes from my experience, which is complaint management,
Okay.
among other things. So you get a call from a client and they're just tearing into you. Oh, I hate you. How could you do this to me?
Yeah.
Don't talk to them. Put down the phone. I pick it up from there.
I see.
A, it insulates you because you're not going to make any kind of statements to become evidence. And B, I have a long history of dealing with difficult people, the
Okay.
most difficult people, unethical lawyers. So I can handle your clients and I can make the situation hopefully go away, or we'll be ready to go if they file a complaint.
Copy.
And that's $9.95, by the way, a month.
Whenever you say complaint, so my only experience with the state bar is one time I had a crazy client, like say I represented him when I didn't, and
Hmm.
then I got an email. I sent over my correspondence saying, I'm telling you, I'm not representing you for this case. We have no relationship. I hope, wish you the best of luck. And sent out, I guess he filed a complaint, and then I responded, and nothing happened.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying a complaint is,
Right.
or is it when actually they go the next step?
No, no. All complaints, there's a form that you can either fill out and drop off the state bar, although not many people do that anymore. There's actually a portal on the state bar's website for what's called an attorney professional misconduct complaint, and you
Mhm.
fill it out. It's pretty straightforward. All they got to do is put your name, address, attach a copy of the retainer, and then a one-page statement regarding what they think the misconduct is.
Okay.
That document generates, if it passes intake, document generates an investigative assignment,
Okay.
and then you'll get that email or that letter. So when you got that letter, it was basically you're in the middle of a state bar investigation,
Yeah.
and then either it's going to get closed or it's going to go forward. But the whole time it's in an investigation, it's confidential. So it's really critical to have the timing right.
Hmm.
Because if you call me when they've already decided that we're going to move forward,
Yeah.
I mean, I'll still do my best, but now we're moving into public.
I got you.
And remember, even before they prove their case, the complaint goes on your profile.
Hmm.
So if someone's looking for a workers' comp attorney, you're both, let's say, equally qualified for plaintiff's work, but one has a complaint pending and one doesn't.
Yeah.
Who do you think the client's going to hire? And they look. So
I
it's
know.
something you really want to avoid. You want to try to take care of an investigation while it's confidential, so that if it is something that's not proper, like the one you described, it goes away. It doesn't tarnish your reputation.
Yeah. I was definitely a little surprised by that one, but thank God. I mean, nothing happened
Yeah,
beyond
yeah.
that. Um, but you're also saying that sometimes people don't respond in time. Like,
Yeah, there are people that ignore investigations.
so like it would have otherwise had been closed, but they just don't respond in time.
Right. For lots of reasons. Some people, it's because they're really that they don't care anymore. They're not
Hmm.
answering their mail from anybody.
Yeah.
Uh, some people get terrified by state bar. I mean, there's a lot of emotions wrapped up in this because it's the potential death of your professional
Yeah.
career.
So what
You
I was
know,
going back to the license, like
yeah.
cherishing
I
the
mean,
license.
divorces,
Yeah.
bankruptcies, and state bar stuff are the three hardest ones emotionally to deal with.
Hmm.
And so again, that's why I think this job is so well suited for me, because I'm really a people person. I joke sometimes when I talk, unlike most lawyers, I have a personality,
No,
you
it's
know.
it's great. It's great.
So I get into it with people. I really make them feel well taken care of. I mean, the best compliment I get after I talk to somebody is like, "Oh, I'm so glad I talked to you. I'll be able to sleep tonight."
Yeah. Do people text you random ethics stuff all the time, like friends?
Well, I stay away from working with text, but I do get emails. Yes, I think a lot of people just want to have questions answered, but I think what they need to understand is while I'm willing to be helpful on occasion just to quickly answer something if it's answerable, but a lot of times they don't understand that there's a lot going on there
Yeah,
and it needs to be done in a formal context. I mean, just even for their benefit, they want me fully engaged on the issue and asking all the questions I need to ask before I give them a recommendation. They don't
sure.
want me just to go off of something based on what they told me. They may not know what's really going on. They may think it's A, but they're not seeing B, C, D,
Hmm.
and I will.
Um, do you have any like interesting war stories? Anything that obviously without names or something, or just things that you've seen in your career that memorable moments or cases that you've been involved in?
Yeah. Yeah, there was a couple when I was a prosecutor that were kind of high profile because the person that I was prosecuting was a well-known PI attorney.
Okay.
Um, and he had failed on 4 or 5 of his client cases and got complaints, and we ended up agreeing to a discipline on that. And that was with Nick Rowley,
Okay.
who is, I think you know who he is.
Yeah, trial
Uh,
attorney.
right. The trial by human or whatever thing that he has. And, I'm not saying he's not a good attorney, but just that because of that, I got written up a lot. I mean, not like they called me, but my name started appearing because when we submit the public filing, I signed it.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. That was my first brush with getting a bunch of attention for something that I did. Later on in my career, there we had the loan modification crisis,
Okay.
where a lot of attorneys were getting involved in loan modifications.
Like legal funding?
No, so what would happen is someone would be in default and they're losing their house,
Mm-hmm.
and people would come in and say, "Hey, we can modify your loan so that you don't lose your house. That we can fight back the foreclosure and so on and so forth." And at first, the real estate licensees and lenders were doing it, but the DRE just shut that down. So then they got the idea, why don't we have lawyers do it? So
Mm.
the state bar is not stopping them, and so we ended up with thousands of cases at the state bar. We created a whole see, I'm saying we again. The state bar created a unit for loan modification misconduct, and we started formulating. And I was part of that lead team. And I got one guy who had essentially taken on something like 40,000 clients
Wow.
solo,
Wow.
you know, and so we prosecuted him. But when it came time for his trial, the entire state bar building was surrounded by the people he had victimized, and they were holding signs, and then they actually attacked him when he walked in, and
So he,
so it was a kind of a they had to close the courtroom, and it was a kind of an interesting experience.
so did he just not get to everyone? It's just people
Yeah, he
that
didn't care. He was just signing up, taking money.
okay.
He had a whole team of non-attorneys that were just signing up, signing up, signing up. I mean, you know, usually either they're really young lawyers, like 1 to 5 years, or really old lawyers, like 25 and up,
Yeah.
that get kind of burned out
Yeah.
by the profession or didn't go the way they wanted,
Yeah, they get
that you
checked
see
out.
making these kinds of mistakes because
Yeah.
they just want, you know, they think getting a law license, means, oh, we're just here. We can take money from people that know less than us.
Got it.
Um, I mean, I think that's why at the bottom of it all, it's not about rules. It's not about knowing rules. If that's what it was, then the lawyer with the best memory would be the most ethical.
Sure.
It's really about character. If you have the kind of character that's required for the practice of law, chances are you won't make those kinds of mistakes to begin with because you'll be basically honest. And
Yeah.
if you're basically honest, almost every other rule of ethic flows from that idea.
I hear that. I mean, but sometimes what it comes down to, even the ones that are very honest, they get clients will try to sometimes take advantage of them and like try to always, renegotiate this or like, oh, do this for me. And then I've taken the path where I just feel it's always better to go after the insurance company. You can just aggressively go after them. So in that type of situation, I feel like I try to not put myself into situations where I'm even close to creating those types of
Yeah.
problems.
I mean, I would say you're trying to minimize risk
Yeah.
essentially. But yeah, I've always said that the practice of law is interesting because we're basically dealing with conflict. We're always engaged in some kind of conflict. Somebody's always either pursuing or defending, and you're used to looking at your opponent in front of you to make sure that they're not gonna, stab you or get you or something. But a lot of people forget there's a client behind you too that's ready to stab you in the back if
Of
it suits
course,
them.
that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
So being a lawyer comes down to what I like to say being the grown up in the room. We have to accept that to do the job that we do, we're doing more than a service. We don't just provide representation. We're having a relationship. That's why
yeah.
they call it an attorney client
Counsel,
relationship. And so that involves high emotions. And if we're dealing with someone who's hurting, someone who may be a good person, but now is going through a really bad time, the person that's closest to them is gonna get it the hardest, just like any relationship.
yeah.
So we have to be in some way, I'm not saying we need to be psychologists, but in some way we have to be students of human nature
Right. I mean, we are
and to
basically
keep
part.
ourselves protected.
We are basically part-time, like counselors,
Yeah, but you want to be careful about how far you go with that
of
because
course,
some people really need more help than an average good-hearted person could provide.
100%.
Yeah. And I think another thing here is learning, and I think it's really helped my practice, is learning. It's an old-fashioned concept. It's called client control, which means you're honest with them, you set expectations, you set boundaries through your retainer and otherwise. How many times can I call you this? Those
Yeah,
are boundaries that need to be set. You got to tend to this just like any other relationship. But you have to also be able to deliver that client when they have an opportunity to get a good settlement or something. If you've got them all worked up and they can't see straight, they're not going to see, the golden apple in front of them. They're going to be chasing, the rotten tree down the brook.
for sure. I 100% agree with you. When I take on a client, I let them know exactly, what my thoughts are on the case. I tell them, hey, like, I don't want you to think that every case is $1 million case. I want, if something comes along that's good evidence, I will let you know it's going to help us. If it's bad, I will tell you what the consequences could be if a judge sees it or whatnot.
Mhm.
Um, and I feel like that builds a lot of trust with clients because
Yeah.
I'm not trying to always sell them like snake oil and like say,
Mhm.
oh yeah, you have the best case and lead them on. But instead, it's more of a journey that we're going through together where I'm gonna do my best to represent you and fight for your benefits or injuries or whatever. And they understand that, hey, it's someone like me that I can relate to that's not just treating me like a number, but like a friend or an actual person
Yeah.
that I associate with.
Yeah. No, no, it's definitely important to do that and to constantly pay it off too.
Yeah.
Don't ignore those calls. Most state
Right.
bar complaints come from people who just forget to return phone calls
Yeah.
for weeks.
Well, there's a lot of mills. I mean, you're dealing
Yeah,
with firms
that's
that
true too.
have hundreds of support staff, you know, I would say sometimes if I'm substituting into a case and I just ask them, why are you deciding that you want to switch your representation? And the answer is always, I've never even spoken to my attorney.
Yeah.
From the second I walked into their office, they assigned me like a case manager that reviewed the case, and that's the main person. And if I want to schedule a phone call with my attorney, then we need to do that like 2, 3 weeks later. And in real life, you can't wait sometimes 2 weeks to talk to your attorney.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't want to ask a case manager certain questions and you want to get answers from the real attorney.
Right.
But I mean, it's a common problem where the mills can't get to the client's needs and then they'll look elsewhere.
Yeah.
So
But
it's,
we still need to, as lawyers, if you want to be responsible, learn the simple power of being able to say no.
yeah,
You shouldn't be in a position to take every single case that walks in your door. But the chances are you need to preserve, like you need to always think every time you take on a new client, by taking on this new client, am I going to now deteriorate the quality representation for all the ones that have already signed up for me? And I'm not saying that that's an easy thing to figure out or that you should only have one client at a time. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying that a lot of people just focus on getting the case instead of thinking about whether or not they should get the case.
I agree. So in my practice, I basically had a firm before with a partner, and then I basically restarted and opened my new office in 2023. Um, and when it comes to signing cases and all that, I tend to have my experience uh, take over when it comes to intake. So I'll know in like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Is this something that I can take on? Like, can I handle this type of client for the next year, year and a half? But I mean, I'm also in that situation blessed with not having incredible amounts of overhead where as some of these firms they need to
Yeah.
take on that business or else they're not going to keep the lights on,
Right. No,
right?
you're right. You're right. And that's why, I mean, the rules are there, but I think you're doing the right thing. Always thinking about competing. Because look, if you're ever that stretched that you can't help your clients, you're not helping anybody. You're not helping
Yeah.
yourself, and you're not helping the client.
Yeah. I mean, delegation is important too, I think there because like if let's say I'm one person and at capacity with how I'm spending my time, but maybe the certain things I'm doing with my time are tasks that I could delegate. I mean, that's when you can hire someone on and your quality of service won't suffer
Right.
because you're delegating the right things to people who are, let's say, support staff, and you're leaving those interactions with your client as something that you do
Yeah.
so that your client's getting the same experience, even though you're able to grow.
Right. No, and plus, don't forget we can always refer. I mean, I don't know if that's a thing
Yeah, yeah.
in your area of practice, but a lot of my business comes from referring from other colleagues
Right.
that are saying, you know what, call Ashod for this case.
Yeah. I mean, all the time. It just depends on the type of case.
Yeah.
So you don't get involved in any sort of work other than ethics related work, state bar work. It's like,
No. The only other thing that I do is are related to it. So you want to start a law corporation,
hmm,
I can help you do that.
I
Or
see.
you need to do your renewals, I know how to do those kinds of things. You know, you want to think about creating formal procedures in your law office for
Yeah.
intake, handling of the case, file retention, all the various things that every firm should have, but they really don't.
Yeah.
I can help you formulate those things to kind of make sure that you get to a place where essentially you can focus 100% on what you do best, which in like just taking you as an example, those worker comp plaintiff cases, and not worry about who's taking care of all the other stuff that has to do with my license,
Yeah.
because you have a procedure in place that will tickle you when that thing is ready to go, or give you a to-do list item or whatever you want to call it. And that's the best way to practice. I think those are the ones that are most successful and will endure, because a lot of times people will grow fast and then you just see all of a sudden, well, what happened?
Yeah.
It's because they grew too fast for their own good. They didn't have policies in place, and things started going haywire and
So
complaints started coming in.
yeah. So then you're basically saying what I'm saying, that that's some of the stuff you should delegate so you can focus on clients,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think having especially if you're a solo, having that assistant, non-attorney assistant or even an attorney assistant, depending on what your sort of your budget is. Yeah, I think it's very important to not ever get close to the line of how much you can handle. Like, let's say theoretically, just throwing out a number, you can handle 40 cases a month. Well, don't ever let it get past 35, and if you can help
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah.
Don't get that close to the line,
No,
and if you have help, maybe that number becomes 60 now.
yeah. It gets crazy fast.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, so you have to always think about the fact that we're professionals,
For
that we're
sure.
not here merely to do a task. We're not here to have a client come and say, I've been injured, get them. We're a professional. We need to decide the terms of that,
Yeah.
or even whether or not we should participate in it. Not everyone has a legitimate objective. Some
Copy.
people just want to hurt other people. And to become a part of that, you really need to look inside to make sure that's the kind of professional you want to be.
What do you mean hurt other people?
Some people just want to sue somebody because they have the money to sue them. Like there's a famous case in
Mm,
State Bar where a guy thought he didn't have to pay a court reporter's bill. It was like $300. So he put her through the ringer.
mhm.
She ended up spending $31,000 defending herself, trying to pursue that $347 bill. So that was abusive. I mean, he was doing that in of himself, but we can easily imagine a variation in that example where he's doing it at the behest of some rich client.
Got it. So yeah, if you do have like a rich defendant, let's say, and they're just willing to spend $100,000 defending a meritless case,
Yeah.
you're saying,
Or a case where you're asking for 25.
yeah,
That's just, and there are and most of that, unfortunately, I shouldn't say unfortunately. We got to realize that a lot of that also comes under the purview of the trial court.
hmm,
It's not always the state bar that's dealing with this stuff. A lot of the frontline stuff, the trial judge should be dealing with. And I guess what I was trying to say earlier is, unfortunately, it's in a context where the judges are kind of hesitant to do it because someone being aggressive might just be someone advocating for their client,
Yeah.
or they're an uncivil sob, you know just causing problems. Sometimes it's not so easy to see that from the bench, and so a lot of them hesitate. But more and more judges are willing now to sanction people and say, when you do silly stuff like not give extensions of time for discovery responses when you should, especially if it's the first request,
Yeah.
you know, and requiring someone to, waive all objections in return, stuff that really, in certain areas especially, are just not okay.
So at what point in the litigation game, like civil litigation practice, does it go from just being tactical and strategic to straight a violation of professional conduct?
I mean, obviously, it's easier to see it in the extreme examples.
Hmm.
So uncivil example usually manifests in the actual behavior. Like, instead of communicating with you as a professional, they're dropping f bombs. They're calling your mother names.
Yeah.
They're doing all kinds of crazy stuff, getting in your face. That's sort of aggressive, and telling you you're no good at what you do, or in a worse way. That's one clear example where things have become unprofessional because, or uncivil, and probably sanctionable, because the attorney now is engaging in an ad hominem attack of someone's character that's got nothing to do with the issues of the case. Another way it happens is that people hide or destroy evidence,
Mm.
you know, and they do it intentionally so
Yeah.
to undermine the claim of a plaintiff, and or whatever the example would be. That's another way it manifests into uncivil. So whenever you're doing something that goes beyond a legitimate objective of defense or prosecution of a claim,
Right.
and it goes and either becomes personal, or is a suppression of evidence, or fabrication of evidence too. So I mean, a lot of these things lead to much more serious misconduct. You're fabricating stuff, you're going to be disbarred.
But I mean, it's not like real life. I get what you're saying, and I know that those things would amount to those types of severe violations, but it's every day is not like the show Suits where you're gonna find people planning evidence or like fabricating evidence. So like if even if you have a hunch, it's still gonna be very hard to prove those types of allegations. I
Yeah.
feel like you're not gonna get the information usually sufficient to go after something like
Well,
that.
that's what I meant earlier when I said it's hard for the courts to really police this, even though they're the best possible one to do it, because it's more immediate, and they're involved in the case, and they have the right to control the case. So you're right.
Yeah.
That's why at the end of the day, civility is only guidelines. It's not. It's. I mean, they're trying to make it actually a rule,
Right.
but that hasn't been approved by the Supreme Court just yet, as far as I know. It's just mainly guidelines to say, look, we're going to work together, probably many times across many different matters. There's no reason to make this personal. We're all here just trying to do a job. Even if I made a mistake or whatever in your mind, what's the point of focusing on that? Just do what you do in response, and I'll do what I do in response, and we should be able to get through this as professionals. And I think there's a little bit of that lost now, for a couple reasons. Obviously, the size
Right.
issue again. It isn't like, maybe 60 years ago, where most people knew each other and there was a serious social opprobrium placed on someone who was acting up like that.
Yeah.
They'd stop being invited to parties, and they'd be ostracized and isolated. I think the other thing is there's been sort of a shift. Maybe it's a generational shift, but people just don't pick up the phone and call anymore and just talk. I mean, I do that because I'm older, and my generation was the phone, right?
Yeah, you're
But
not that
now,
older. I mean, you said DMX earlier, so I feel like you know a
well,
few
I keep
things.
up with pop culture, but I think a lot of people nowadays like to transact even serious matters by text. That's just not something that's natural for me, is what I'm trying to say.
I got you.
But I do think you get a nasty letter from someone, one of these nasty grams, saying, "Oh, you did this, you did that. I'm not going to, accept this. I'm going to report you to the state bar." Sometimes pick on the phone and say, "Hey, what's going on?
Sure.
I had no intention of doing that. I clearly upset you. If I did, I'm sorry. But let's talk about it." Because
100%.
and I think there's a real hesitant to do that, because it's not well received. But I do think, if we try, most people will realize that, oh, I just got really mad at the guy. I didn't mean to go off the handle like that. and it gives them a chance to sort of in a
Yeah.
face-saving way come back to reality and actually get something done.
Yeah. Good people have bad days,
Yeah,
it happens.
yeah, yeah.
So Ashot, let's say when you're not working and you're now we're talking outside of practice, like what are some things that you like doing?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm married and I have 3 children, so I like, traveling and spending time with my family. As I mentioned earlier, I'm Armenian and I'm pretty involved in my community. I'm involved, in the every Armenian community has something called an Armenian Center.
Of
I'm
course.
involved in the or Haigetron, I'm involved in the Armenian Center and, on a board level as well as a member level. I also use my lawyer skills to advocate on behalf of our community too, through the Armenian National Committee of America, that tries to make sure that our issues regarding genocide recognition, reparations, and even just the current political circumstances of Armenia when it was,
Yeah.
last year being attacked by Azerbaijan and creating ethnic cleansing, to advocate for this government to say, that's something that all people of good conscience should want to stop. And, so that's a lot of my time, other than my family. And then my personal interests are, I don't know, I like music. I played guitar since I was,
Nice.
6 years old. Um, and, I also like sci-fi and, Star Trek. And I'm sort of a Trekkie kind of but I like them all, the fantasy genres. I'm
Cool.
really into movies as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Are you a big Interstellar fan?
I like that movie, yeah.
Yeah.
It was a really interesting movie.
Like so
Although some of it, I have to admit, it was a little hard for me to follow because 'cause I'm not too deep into the physics
yeah.
of it. I mean, I understood the story, but I think there's more there if you know the physics of what he's trying to get at.
I saw it recently in IMAX and it's one of my favorite movies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Probably one of my favorite movies are like the Lord of the Rings series,
okay. I love those
the
too.
most recent ones,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hobbit too, or no, just the original?
Yeah, The Hobbit too, but not as much as the original, yeah.
Yeah. You said you're very involved with the Armenian community.
Mhm.
Let me ask you this because I was just having a discussion the other day with one of my friends. Like, do you ever feel overwhelmed dealing with Armenians and the Armenian personalities?
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, we have a very passionate people. I mean, we are very passionate people, and we all have opinions. I mean, part of our, I think, our history can be explained by the fact that all of us want to be the chief.
Yeah.
We sort of have that very alpha kind of personality. But at the end of the day, it's something that I feel a very strong emotional bond to because as much as I'm proud of being an American because I'm born here,
Yeah.
I love my Armenian identity. I love being able to connect with someone just by virtue of the fact that we speak a similar language or we have an IAN or a YAN at the end of our names. And
Yeah.
so I enjoy that aspect of my life. It's a big part of my personality to connect with my people. But yeah, everyone can have, an irritating day.
Yeah. We were talking specifically like when you have an Armenian client, they basically are a lawyer without a law degree sometimes, and like they think that they know everything better than you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
No, when I first started, there was a couple clients that I wasn't kind of able to get control of, and they started asking me to do things. And when I said no, they got so angry. They're like, "What do you mean no?"
yeah,
And I want all of my money back. And sometimes you just make the choice that what, let's live to fight another day. Sidov, go.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah. You don't need the headache sometimes.
yeah, you know, if they're But I've learned since then. I'm very conscious and careful about establishing those boundaries. And if I'm seeing somebody right off the bat not being able to show that kind of
Mhm.
collaboration with me, then I just move on. I just say, I'm not the right lawyer for you.
Yeah,
And it's probably true because they will need someone that probably is just like them, fighting back and, tooth and nail. And that's what they're used to. That's what, because it's all about fear of the unknown,
yeah,
right? It's a fear of saying, oh, I got to listen to this guy. I'm not used to that. Can I trust him? How do I know he's not going to cheat me?
right.
And so you kind of try to understand that.
I mean, I thought it was very you're in a very unique or I'll say it like this, like your background and just being former state bar prosecutor, ethics attorney, I just feel like it's a unique profile. I can't say I've met someone with that type of qualification before.
Yeah.
So
Well, you're right. I was the only Armenian attorney at the state bar when I
yeah,
was there. Just till until the end, there was a couple
yeah, but I
others
think it's
that came
cool.
on.
I think
Yeah.
it's really cool.
Yeah. No, no. I like I said, I feel very fortunate that I found an area that just so suited to me and my personality,
Yeah,
you know. So
awesome. Do you have any questions or things you want to bring up?
no, just basically, maybe I can say first of all, thank you for this opportunity.
Sure.
This was actually a lot of fun, just to sit here and talk with you. It felt really natural. Um, but I want lawyers to know that there's someone like me out there, and that they don't need to go it alone. They don't need to deal with these questions as best they can. They can reach out to someone like me, and really let's make the practice of law not so difficult. There's
Right.
other ways of handling these concerns, because I think what we do is very important. I think, like, I understand the lawyer jokes and stuff like that, but unfortunately, there's some truth to where these jokes come from. The whole thing about the shark fins and everything else that they talk about. But in a lot of ways, I kind of resent it, because I feel like law is a very high calling, just as high calling as medicine.
Yeah,
I know that's controversial maybe to somebody, but no, I think, they may be tending to the body and health, but we're tending to life and liberty and property,
yeah,
those are things that maybe they won't keep you alive, but you need them to live.
for sure. I mean,
So I think law is an honorable profession, and I tell everyone I can that.
when COVID came around and how all the businesses shut down, and we were one of the essential businesses. It's like,
Right. Right.
what are my clients going to do if I am not able to go to court for their case?
Yeah.
You know?
No, every now and then they get reminded.
Yeah.
Like, even our democracy depends on a strong lawyer bar,
Right.
because if we're not there advocating both sides of an issue, we're just going to allow whoever's strong to just bowl over everybody.
Right. I mean, the lobbying sometimes is an issue though for, when bad people are lobbying
Yeah.
because they're rich, but
Yeah.
I get what you're saying.
Any system could be corrupted,
Yeah,
but it's when it works well.
I agree. So yeah, I think that's just about all the time we have for today. Also,
Okay.
thank you for coming.
Yes.
Hoik, thanks for helping setting this up. Guys, please like and subscribe our channel. We're back into the groove of having some more guests on, and let me know if you have any suggestions for who you'd like to see on the podcast next. Again, thanks. That'll be it.